On today's primetime local news, a handy bus stolen, then recovered. Could there be a connection to the 5 oil trucks stolen in Lashburn?
For the most part, vehicle thefts are crimes of opportunity.
And $200 worth of gift cards tampered with when a local man tries to use them for the holidays.
So now he's out $200. He doesn't make a lot of money. He's minimum wage, and there's a lot of people probably are. And it hits the pocketbook.
And RCMP arrests 4 people in connection to the assault charges of a man in Lloydminster.
Lloydminster RCMP was investigating an individual who had been robbed and assaulted. Throughout that investigation, a stolen vehicle was recovered.
Plus, World Juniors 2020, Canada wins gold against Russia.
Prime time local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Around the holidays, one common gift that everyone can use is gift cards, and one local kid bought $200 worth for his family members, but it turned out his cards had already been used by someone else. Jasmine King has that story.
Dean Lawrence's son wanted to give his family members a good gift for the holidays, and he came up with the idea of buying gift cards.
My son went in to Walmart in Lloydminster just before Christmas to buy some prepaid MasterCards from there for a couple gifts for our family members, and he didn't inspect them because nobody's really used to what's going on, or our family members decide to use them. It was the day after Boxing Day, December 27th, I think it was, and the cards wouldn't work.
The gift cards came to a total of $200, but when they wouldn't work, the family wondered why. They decided to look at the cards again.
Inspecting the cards, and what we found was they're nicely sealed, but where the card barcode is supposed to show up, the good card, they have glued in a piece of paper with the proper code matching the new card, and they put an old card in not matching. So they did that for both of them.
Lawrence says they contacted Walmart about the cards, and they claimed they couldn't do anything about the issue since it was third party.
Walmart won't do anything about it. We contacted RCMP. They contacted the MasterCard company. They were supposed to contact us, and they never did. So we never heard back from anybody yet.
Now, as they're trying to figure out the situation, they want to warn others as they don't want it to happen again.
Now he's out $200. He doesn't make a lot of money. He's minimum wage, and there's a lot of people probably are, and it hits the pocketbook. Now he's out $200 and 2 gifts that people should have got.
We reached out to Walmart and received no response. Jasmine King, Primetime Local News.
Coming off of the holiday season, several vehicle owners are less cheery after a series of thefts reported in the past 2 weeks. Josh Ryan has more on the increase, which is highlighted by the several businesses affected this weekend.
Despite efforts to curb rising vehicle thefts, the holidays often bring a small increase.
For the most part, vehicle thefts are crimes of opportunity. Because it's the winter months, people are leaving their vehicles running. They're leaving keys in it.
The start to 2020 has already been a sour one for several owners.
I think over those last couple of weeks, we've had about 6 stolen vehicle reports in the city of Lloydminster.
Saturday morning saw 3 trucks stolen from Scorpion Oilfield Services in Lashburn, and 2 vehicles were taken from the Border City Connect's storage bays.
They drove out of the yard as the car wash attendant was arriving for work. They drove right past them. And honestly, if they hadn't left the bay doors open when they made their getaway, he would have been none the wiser.
One van was recovered off of Highway 17. With other thefts in the area, it brings the question of whether or not it's been targeted.
It feels like they know what they're doing. I mean, they're attempting to remove GPS units. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a joyride smash and grab.
To find trends, it's critical to report all thefts to the RCMP.
We always like it when people call and report crime in the city. That gets us hot areas and hot spots to focus on. So if we know a lot of vehicles are being stolen in a certain section of town, we can focus more of our police presence in that area and hopefully curb some of those thefts.
And you should also move to strengthen your own vehicle security, which the Connects will do to avoid being hit in the future.
We're going to do everything in our power to ensure that we're not aiding anybody in the theft and making sure that we're going to protect ourselves to the best of our ability.
Josh Ryan, Primetime Local News.
3 adults and a minor are facing multiple charges after a man was assaulted on December 27th in Lloydminster. 3 of the individuals were arrested with help from the Onion Lake Detachment and Police Dog Services after police pursued a stolen vehicle, and the 4th was taken into custody following the search of the Lloydminster home.
On December 27th, Lloydminster RCMP was investigating an individual who had been robbed and assaulted. Throughout that investigation, a stolen vehicle was recovered, as well as 4 people were arrested. In these stolen vehicles, 3 people were arrested. A 4th was arrested after a search warrant was conducted at a residence in Lloydminster.
Austin Simmons, Kendall Cardinal, and Kira Ochuseo, and a minor faced multiple charges.
The adults were charged with robbery, unlawful confinement, plethora of other charges, and the youth was also charged with robbery as well.
The investigation is ongoing and all 4 charged remain in custody. In this week's retrospect, our Abby St. John goes back to 2000 and 2005 to take a look at 2 stories. The first one is how Border City residents spend the first day of the new year, and the other, Onion Lake residents who joined the Canadian Army or military.
In 2000, the city was filled with different activities for Border City residents to take part in on the first day of the new year.
An impressive way to bring in the new millennium and cap off Lloydminster's first day 1 on the border.
Essentially, a handful of us got together and didn't think that we should sort of enter the next century without acknowledging it somewhere, mainly for the kids. You know, the kids are going to be here. We wanted them to be able to remember something about the day.
And there was plenty to take memories from. The ice held up through the warm temperatures this week for Shinny, while in the warmth of the leisure center, others rode the wave into the new year. With all the hype and attention paid to New Year's Eve, many chose to stick close to home, waiting to see what, if anything, would happen. And most weren't surprised by the outcome.
Not really. Kind of hoping something was going to happen, but, you know, that's about it.
Back in 2005, an Onion Lake resident was getting ready for his first tour of duty with the Canadian military.
My brothers are RCMP, and I've always thought about joining up in the RCMP, but I don't know, I don't think I was really ready to, so I thought I'd take an extra step there and do something a little crazier than my brothers. Join the Army.
While there may be life beyond the military, Carter's immediate thoughts are of a tour of duty about to begin in a month's time.
Afghanistan, it's going to be hot. That's what I know right now. The Canadian Forces are going to go in there and help stabilize the country so it can work on its own instead of having other countries in there taking care of problems or whatever, just so their police and their army can handle their own problems.
For this week's retrospect, I'm Abby St. John.
Retrospect is brought to you by Webb's Machinery. Webb's Machinery, your New Holland dealer in Vermilion, Bakerville, and Lamont.
Well, it's looking like it's going to get even colder this week. Here's our Abby St. John with a look at your weather.
Thanks, Judy. Well, currently it is minus 17 here in Lloydminster, and it will get cooler as we head into this week. Fairly clear skies, just a little bit of cloud coverage throughout. 13-kilometer-per-hour winds coming in from the northwest, making it feel closer to minus 25 with that wind chill. Across Alberta, minus 18 in Cold Lake and Athabasca, minus 12 in Edmonton, minus 11 in Red Deer and Rocky Mount House, minus 8 in Edson, minus 10 in Whitecourt, and minus 4 out in Jasper. And on the Saskatchewan side, minus 20 in Meadow Lake, minus 17 in Melfort, and minus 16 in Prince Albert, Saskatoon, and in North Battleford. And overnight in North Battleford, they'll be sitting fairly clear as the temperature will drop to minus 27, and that wind will be at 7 kilometers per hour coming in from the west. And then tomorrow there'll be a daytime high of minus 20 with that wind coming in from the east-southeast at 9 kilometers per hour. And then in Cold Lake, they're also sitting fairly clear, and the temperature will drop to minus 26 overnight, and that wind will be at 6 kilometers per hour coming from the west-northwest and pick up to 11 kilometers per hour coming from the east tomorrow with a daytime high of minus 19. here in Lloydminster, we'll have a little bit more cloud coverage overnight, and there's about a 30% chance of some snowfall into tomorrow morning, and the temperature will drop to -23 overnight, and the wind will come in from the northwest at around 10 to 15 kilometers per hour, and then switch directions to the southeast tomorrow with that same between 10 to 15 kilometers per hour, and a high of -18 and a low of -23. And then on Wednesday, there'll be a high of -16 and a low of -18, and there's about a chance that we could see about 3 to 6 centimeters of snow. And then on Thursday, it'll be a high of -22 and a low of -24 with a mix of sun and cloud. That's a look at your 3-day forecast. We'll have more news coming up after the break.
The president of the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan says 2019 was a tale of extreme weather, from drought to excessive moisture, and he is hoping for a better year in 2020. Todd Lewis says it's hard to be optimistic when many farmers have crop left to harvest in the spring, but he's hoping for more stable weather patterns in the coming year, pointing out Saskatchewan is next year country. Lewis also says trade issues were a big concern last year, and he is hoping for improvements in international trade in 2020. Well, BC Premier John Horgan says he doesn't want to see the bloom fall of BC bud, which is why the province is looking to introduce initiatives that support the talents of cannabis growers and merchants in the legal market. Late last year, the BC government provided $675,000 to help cannabis operators in the Kootenays overcome the barriers to operating in the legal economy. Ted Smith, a longtime Victoria area marijuana activist, says BC has allowed large-scale corporate marijuana producers to dominate the market. Horgan said at a news conference in December that he remembers being in Amsterdam and seeing all of the BC Bud Awards that were being given out at the time when the product was illegal. He says it's ironic there seems to be more Ontario products being distributed in BC through the legal market. And now here are your agriculture prices for today.
We're a part of less than 5% of Canadian auto body shops and Lloydminster's only locations with certified collision care recognition at City Centre Auto Body.
Holy Rosary's senior boys basketball team took a trip down south over their Christmas break. Most teams, when traveling south, go to Calgary or Lethbridge. The Raiders went south of the border to Wyoming to ball out. The Raiders finished the tournament 0-3 against tough competition. Toby Ajebu stood out, earning All-Star honors. Now here's to the weather with our Abby St. John.
Thanks, Evan. Well, taking a look at our satellite radar outside of the Edmonton area, there had been experiencing some snowfall over the past couple of hours, making its way more east to the Vegreville and the Marwayne area. There's about a 30% chance that we could see some snowfall tonight, overnight, and into tomorrow morning, but it should die off by the morning if it does fall. In Saskatchewan, nothing too severe. Little spots down in North Battleford and then up in the Cold Lake area as it made its way to the Saskatchewan side. And then just heavier cloud coverage. Some regions will be fairly clear overnight, and then others will have a little bit more heavier cloud coverage. -17 here in Lloydminster, as well as in Maidstone, -12 in Macklin, -16 in North Battleford, -20 in St. Walburg and Isla Cross, -21 in Meadow Lake, -19 in Pierceland and in Green Lake. And on the Alberta side, -19 in Marwayne and Bonnyville and in Vegreville, -14 in Provost, -15 in Wainwright, -21 in Vermilion and Lac La Biche, -18 in Cold Lake, -23 in St. Paul, and -12 out in Edmonton. And tomorrow, daytime high here in Lloydminster of -18, as well as out in Bonnyville. minus 17 in Marwayne and Lac La Biche, minus 19 in Cold Lake, minus 16 in Vermilion and St. Paul, minus 14 in Vegreville, minus 11 out in Edmonton, minus 15 in Wainwright, and minus 13 in Provost. And on the Saskatchewan side, minus 21 up in Isle Cross, minus 20 in Green Lake, Meadow Lake, St. Walburg, and North Battleford, minus 12 in Macklin, minus 19 in Maidstone and in Pearceland. And taking a look overnight, Murnum and Isle Cross sitting fairly cloudy, and then Provost, Unity, and Wainwright clear skies, and then the rest of the region just fairly cold, with temperatures ranging between minus 28 and minus 20. And your school day forecast for tomorrow will be a cold one with a high of minus 25 at 8 a.m. And then by the time recess rolls around, we'll get a lot more sun, but it will only be minus 24. And then by the time lunch rolls around, it will be minus 21 with a mix of sun and cloud. And then by the time school is out, the clouds will take over and it will be minus 18. And then the low of minus 26. And then on Wednesday, there's a 70% chance of some snow with a high of minus 15 and a low of minus 20. On Thursday, it'll be a high of minus 19 and a low of minus 22. And then on Friday, we get a lot more sun than we've seen in the past couple of days, with a high of minus 23 and a low of minus 30. To start your weekend off on Saturday, it'll be a high of minus 20 and a low of minus 25 with a 54% chance of some snowfall. And then on Sunday, it'll be a high of minus 25 and a low of minus 28. And then back on Monday, it'll be a mix of sun and cloud with a high of minus 28 and a low of minus 35. That's a look at your 7-day forecast. We'll have more news in the question of the day coming up after the break.
Of course, the Golden Globes were happening this weekend, and the question was, what was the highlight for you? The 77th Golden Globes Award took place Sunday, honoring the best in television and film. And of course, the best for me was, Ricky Gervais. Yeah. He had some comments. He was cutting down everybody, and he really made that whole show awesome to watch, because it was like watching these guys kind of get nervous on their seats kind of thing, right? He was saying some stuff.
I love when the hosts are comedians.
Yeah.
That's just, it makes it just so funny, because comedians really know how to make jokes about everyone.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He tore everyone apart, and it was funny, and it was enjoyable, and that's what I love when comedians host the Golden Globes or any award show, really, because they really do make it just another stand-up show for them, which makes it just enjoyable and entertaining to watch.
Yeah. And he didn't spare anybody. Like, he made a joke about Jeffrey Epstein, which drew some cheers from the crowd.
Yeah.
The other one, he joked about Felicity Huffman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was something to do with his limousine.
Okay.
And something, I don't remember the whole thing, but it was interesting because he was just telling jokes left and right about everybody, and people were laughing, but some people were cringing, right, as to what he was talking about. Greta was another one that he talked about as well too.
Yeah, some people, obviously, depending on your style of humor, did side of why are you saying that? And then, but majority of people loved it and thought it was really funny and light. But you're always going to get that with comedians as well. I think one of my biggest highlights was, I didn't watch the whole show, but Ellen receiving the Carol Burnett Excellence in Television Award. I thought that was, she was a great second winner next to Carol Burnett last year. And the speech that was given on her behalf was really heartwarming, and she's changed so many people's lives over the years through her comedy, through giving away so many things on her talk show. Like, it's incredible, and I think it was very well deserved.
It was, and I think Tom Hanks was another one too. He was kind of tearing up with his family whenever he mentioned his family was there. I thought that was a touching moment as well too. Forget the comedian who was the host, who was amazing, but there was a lot of highlights for us all, I think so.
Yeah, exactly.
And some more highlights were the pets, of course, that you guys sent us. Thank you for sending these for a chance to win a gift card from the Pet Pad.
We want to see your pets. Send photos of your pet and their name to our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram to have them featured on Pet of the Day. Your name will be entered into a weekly draw for a gift certificate from the Pet Pad.
Joining me in studio today for our weekly sports panel is the one, the only Josh Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
Josh, you know, it's been a little bit of a slow time for local sports in Lloydminster, but now starting the new year off, it's starting to really pick up. And one team that's back in action and has been for, I guess, this week was the Lloydminster Bobcats. Unfortunately, didn't quite get the results that they would have hoped for.
No, I mean, you can kind of count their entire season in that category of not getting the results they were looking for. Their last win coming on December 13th. Specifically, a disappointing start to the new year. They hosted Camrose over the weekend, and despite having a lead, were unable to hold on. A couple of calls that maybe you could call controversial. Certainly they would like to think that, but at the end of the day, you still have to put points on the board. They weren't able to do so against the Kodiaks.
For sure, and those are the kind of games that, you know, the Bobcats are really going to need to start winning those one-goal games. The amount of one-goal games that they've dropped is absolutely through the roof, and you mentioned it. It's penalties. They took a couple bad penalties, a couple bad calls against them, a couple missed calls that could have sent them to the power play that they just need to touch up on. One thing that I did see in that Camrose game that I really liked, they switched their forecheck up. So before they used to do a really aggressive forecheck, now they're a little more passive and they wait for pucks. It's actually how they scored their third goal, Jared Miller's first goal in the AJHL. So I do like that, and I think they are taking steps in the right direction. The only thing is, you know, how soon is that, you know, are those steps going to really come into play?
And certainly that actually makes sense for a team that's a little bit younger, is trying to learn good structure in terms of how you play hockey. So being a little more conservative actually makes sense to trying to get a solid defensive foundation rather than being risky when you have the athletes and the experienced athletes to maybe be risky. But again, you still have to find a way to put points on the board. It's great that they have these close hockey games, but until they can build a couple of wins in a row instead of one every couple of weeks, you're not going to see the guys get the confidence they need to take the next step that Coach Nigel Dubé wants them to take.
For sure. You know, like we've mentioned it throughout the whole season. It's a learning curve. It's a process. We'll see when they get there, kind of thing.
Certainly, and it's going to be a learning process as well for the Holy Rosary Raiders basketball teams. Men's basketball learned a few tough lessons themselves over the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. They traveled down south to Wyoming. You know, most teams, most schools, when you hear they're going down south, it's to Calgary or maybe Lethbridge. But traveling a couple states down south, and you know, in the U.S. there is some top tier ballers down there. Unfortunately, Holy Rosary did go 0-3. They had a couple tournament all-stars, so there were bright spots throughout this break. Just unfortunately couldn't pull those wins together there.
And again, in that situation, they're not necessarily looking for wins. When you get to play against tougher competition, that's what you're looking for heading into the later point of the season. I know Coach Luke Kuipers will constantly look for their team to be a little more competitive defensively, and that's something that's obviously put to the test when you play against teams with really good athletes and that come from really good programs. So certainly lots of that for them.
And there's actually going to be more basketball teams coming into play, I guess, in this upcoming weekend with the Lakeland Rustlers back in action, kicking it off. Josh, what can we expect in this second semester from, I guess, all four of the court teams?
Well, I think you can expect some pretty competitive play, certainly from the men's basketball team. While they have this weekend off, they will look at a very key weekend following against Concordia. They're obviously in a tie situation for that fourth and final playoff spot. Women's basketball wanting to hang on to their top seed against Keano. That'll be a tough matchup as well. But for volleyball, a little more immediate. They open their home season again on Saturday against the Concordia Thunder. When you have the women's matchup, it's not one that they can sleep on because the Thunder are a little bit improved, but it's still a matchup that they're favored in. The men, on the other hand, while favored, were played very tough by the Thunder last semester, and they need every one of their wins they can get against the lower ranked teams to not have that collapse like they did late last year.
For sure, and Concordia for the men's side is a team that's not even that much lower than Lakeland. So what are a couple keys for them in this upcoming weekend?
Well, basically doing all the things you do well, which is certainly ball control, passing the ball well, being in position on defense, not making errors. They need to play almost picture perfect in those categories to win against teams because they're not as athletic or as big as other teams. The other thing will be really putting pressure on the block on the right side for the Concordia Thunder and chisel their way through a few kills, hit smart shots. Again, setting choices will help that for sure.
Well, I guess we'll see if those picture-perfect plays can come to fruition.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery and Furniture House, downtown Lloydminster.
Once again, joining me in studio is the lovely Josh Ryan.
Always like being called lovely.
No, it's because you are lovely.
Oh, thanks.
And another team, I guess, that's feeling lovely and feeling loved is of course, the Team Canada World Junior Championship team. Of course, taking the gold medal in this past weekend against Russia. And Josh, just sort of break down for me, I guess, how all the events unfolded throughout this entire tournament. There was no shortage of drama by any means.
Oh, certainly. It started with the opening of the tournament. I mean, their first game against the Americans, they're down 2-0, and I remember talking to my uncle, whose place I was watching the game at, going, this team looks a little bit like a dud this year. There's just no energy. There's no zip in the way they were skating. They were just completely outclassed in the first period of that tournament. They go on to win that game 6-4. It's a very dramatic back and forth affair. Obviously, it had a really bad follow-up against Russia, but maybe that was a blessing in disguise because it obviously motivated them to come back a lot more determined in the final. They were basically lights out the rest of the way till that tournament game. And of course, the tournament game was something else. Down 3-1, coming from behind to win 4-3. Great performances, including their captain Hayden, who obviously played with an injury and was still able to score in that final game. Lots of great storylines.
For sure. And one of my favorite storylines, specifically from that final game, is just one of the most unlikely heroes who's now etched his name in Canadian hockey history, that being Akil Thomas. He sat on the bench for most of the game, and then he gets thrown on there in some of the last minutes of this game and goes out and scores an unbelievable goal, just that extra effort put in. That's really what Team Canada is all about, and I think when people think of Team Canada and Canadian hockey, it's putting in that extra effort. So for him to exemplify that, just amazing in my opinion.
And that's what happens in sports. That's why we love watching these things live. That's why it tops any kind of reality television, as you just can't write how good this stuff is. And you always have a hero like that who has a smaller role on a team. You can point to many times in the NBA playoffs, for example, where it's the 9th guy off the bench who might only play 5 minutes in a game, but he hits one big three that puts you over the top. In this case, it's a much bigger event with a game-winning goal, and again, one that will probably be the most memorable Canadian juniors goal since perhaps Jordan Eberle tying the game against the Russians almost a decade, more than a decade ago now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that Jordan Eberle goal is pretty amazing. I don't know if I would put it quite in that class, but
I said since, not
okay.
It's not in the same. You could say it's not in the same class, but it did also win them a gold medal versus tying the semifinal.
Putting it to that point.
Though I'll certainly still side with Eberle. As much as I enjoyed that, there's still plenty of NHL hockey to talk about. The All-Star rosters announced, and I have some nits to pick, but you may as well start.
Yeah, we're just going to kick it off and talking about the last man in vote, where the fans can vote on, like I said, the last man in, who gets that last spot at the All-Star game. And a couple key players for me, one being Cale Makar, who's not in the All-Star game. Obviously, one player per team sort of gets invited in. So, Nathan McKinnon was for Colorado, but I think Cale Makar definitely deserves to be there, second in rookie scoring and as a defenseman. And then second is Mika Zibanejad for the New York Rangers. He's 13th in points per game, which I know that surprised a lot of people, including myself. So I think he's one guy that also could be in there.
And my issue is not even with the players picked, it's simply with the fact that there has to be a player per team. I know they want to represent each fan base, but the All-Star game is meant to be for the best players in the league. And I think it's criminal when you have multiple players on a team that deserve to be there that don't get to be there. You want the fans to have a great experience, and specifically the fans that go and watch that and watch it on TV. And as much as you love to see a guy representing your team, I think most fans, even the ones from a team like Columbus or such, who some years have clearly not had an all-star style player, they'd rather see the best players in the world all together at once.
Well, some fans who got to see some of the best players in their own sport were for the NFL playoffs this past weekend. Now we'll throw it to our Abby St. John with the last minute of play.
Thanks, guys. So the NFL playoffs kicked off this weekend with an exciting wild card round. For the first time in a decade, the Patriots missed out on a first-round bye when they lost their last regular season game to the Dolphins. On Saturday, they faced the Tennessee Titans at home, and with the force of Titans running back Derrick Henry, the Titans dethroned Tom Brady and the Patriots dynasty 20-13. Trailing 16-0 in the third quarter, the Texans scored 19 straight points. The Bills tied it up, sending the game into overtime. In overtime, the Texans kicked their way to the next round of the playoffs, winning 22-19. After a back and forth between Kirk Cousins' Vikings and Drew Brees' Saints, the game ended in a 20-20 tie, sending it to overtime. Cousins would connect with tight end Kyle Rudolph, ending the game 26-20 and ending the Saints' playoff run. A game that was defensively strong for both the Seahawks and the Eagles. It was the Seahawks that walked away with a 17-9 win. Seahawks rookie wide receiver DK Metcalf proved his talents with 6 receptions, over 100 yards, and his first NFL postseason touchdown. For next week's matchups, I'm going to take the Vikings, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Seahawks for your last minute of the play. Taking a look at your 7-day forecast, a high of -18 and a low of -26 for tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, there's a 70% chance that we could see some snowfall with a high of -15. On Thursday, it'll be a high of -19, and then things get cooler on Friday with a high of -23, and then on Saturday, a high of -20, high of -25 on Sunday, and then to finish off your 7-day forecast on Monday with a high of -28.
Oh my gosh, those numbers are too cold.
Nope, yeah, can't do it.
Can't do it.
Way
but I
too
know
cold.
what you can do. Fried chicken.
Yes.
We talked about that, so I'm gonna have to. We've made a bet. I'm gonna make fried chicken and see if it's like Popeyes, and I'm gonna trick her because you love Popeyes.
Yeah, you think that I won't be able to tell Popeye's chicken from homemade chicken.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly are underestimating
You're so
how
excited
much I
you can't
love
even
fried
say it.
chicken.
I see that.
And Popeye's fried chicken. So I would 100% be able to tell homemade versus Popeye's fried chicken
What's in
any
the
day.
ingredients?
Well, they are very Cajun style. That's what they're known for, and that's what I love about them.
And that's how you get the information, which is really
We'll
good.
see about that.
We'll see about that. And that is it for the show. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow.